Righteous Kill tells the powerful tale of a corrupt cop turned serial killer and takes an uncompromising look at police work in the big city. In this documentary, we'll examine the real challenges facing law enforcement today and uncover some true stories about the dark side of the force.
Let's go. I'm buying.
The kind of people that become cops are those typically male, high testosterone level, type A personalities that are involved in sports, maybe in high school, typically not playing the trumpet in the school band.
There is, I think, the powerful motive to be a hero, to be a rescuer.
Subject shot 184th at St. Nicholas.
Cops are people of action. They definitely seek out action. Once you become a cop, it's more of an adrenaline rush every day that you show up to work. There's wins and losses. No cop likes to lose, no matter what it is.
You're gone! I'm gone.
It's a traffic infraction, a murder conviction. Don't like to lose.
You fucking make money here, not now.
Order in court.
You get him out of here before somebody passes a sentence on him you can't appeal.
Police fabricate information all the time, whether it's a speeding ticket, whether it's a murder conviction, and you never get to see it because it never comes to light.
We planted the gun in Randall's apartment. Happy? Thank you.
Yes, I am.
Some of the greatest works of short story American fiction have been entered into police arrest reports.
I mean, this is fascinating. There is some dubious police work here, boys.
Come on, let's go. Let's go. Come on.
There's a tremendous dichotomy in the experience of the police officer. On the one hand, he feels tremendously powerless because he leaves the academy thinking he's going to make things right, he's going to make the world a better place. And if he goes to a high crime neighborhood where he's hated, he recognizes very early that there's very little he can do.
When Richie Rivera left the police academy and became an officer in West New York, he quickly discovered that there was more to police work than just keeping the peace.
A police department is the biggest rumor mill in any municipality. So the rumors that were going around in my town were that police officers were involved in protecting organized crime figures. There were bodegas on every corner, and you could literally just gamble in just about all of them. Now, these places were the mecca of sports betting as part of the Cuban organized crime, where you could come in and place bets on just about anything that moved. Instead of organized crime just working freely throughout the community, they were taxed. And the cops were the ones that were collecting that tax. A lot of the people that I worked with were on the take.
These people who pay the cop are paying him because they recognize his power over them. It's the recognition of one's power that these little people are giving me gifts because they recognize that I'm a big person.
You're talking literally hundreds of thousands of dollars, probably the potential of millions of dollars. And it's very difficult for a cop to turn away from the cash when it's on the table. It wasn't a police department. We were another arm of organized crime. We were the ones out there either collecting debt or taking bribes or twisting arms. I realized I was working in a shithole.
Rivera decided to take action. He called the FBI, and a few months later started meeting secretly with agents. Rivera did not inform on other cops. He gave the FBI information on the rackets themselves and left it to the feds to discover which officers were involved.
So what do you know about racketeering? Anything?
In order to take out the garbage, I had to get my hands dirty a little bit. So I got involved in the rackets. I was approaching people who were engaged in racketeering, and I started offering my services. And I became a dirty cop by role, undercover for the FBI.
As we see in Righteous Kill, cops taking the law into their own hands goes much further than protecting organized crime.
Good old days. We used to let the perps bleed out and call off the ambulance. Calm.
My son was on his way to be born, and I needed to make more money, and the position of police officer was available in Newark, New Jersey.
Sam Clark joined the Newark police force and rapidly rose to the rank of lieutenant. One day, he happened upon a situation in which officers were arresting two teens who had been fighting in the street.
Hey, hands on the gate.
I was working gang intelligence. When I tried to break up a fight, I saw that the two boys grabbed each other by the collar.
It's all your fault. It's all your fault. It's all your fault.
That's all they did. No punches were thrown or anything.
Clark thought it was his duty to intercede.
Hey, try it.
My intention was to simply come in between them. And when I tried to break that up, another officer grabbed me from behind and nearly choked me to death. The individual was choking me, very aggressively. I saw the patch. I couldn't believe it. Why is this guy choking me? And at one point, I was actually going to take out my gun and shoot him because I felt that I was going to die. After the incident, even when I was dazed and I was trying to get other officers who may have witnessed it, they were actually running away. They didn't want to talk to me.
The police officers that hit people know full well doing so that any of the other cops are not going to tell on them, and they can do it freely.
There is the cultural imperative in police work, which is you don't rat. If you want to keep your membership in the police fraternity, you do not give up a police officer who is breaking the rules to the police department. You don't become a traitor to your group.
Clark filed a full report on the incident and also looked into the past history of his attacker.
They gave him a reprimand, and that was it. I found out he had many incidents of brutality, and about 18 months later, he committed suicide. I also understand that he was on drugs. Nevertheless, they protected him. They felt that he was more valuable to the department than someone that was clean and sober and had an excellent record.
Surprisingly, for investigating the man who had almost killed him, Clark was given 100 days without pay.
You tell me, what are they serious about? Are they serious about stopping corruption, or are they serious about stopping people who expose corruption?
Without knowing it, Clark had confronted the blue wall of silence.
The blue wall of silence is something that's not spoken of. You don't need to speak of it. Could be a situation where something went wrong and it's not in an officer's favor. So the other officers at the scene already know that they have to cover that guy's ass to make it justified, whatever it was that took place.
That separated my life. There was my life before that incident and my life after that incident.
But Clark's eyes had been open forever to the ongoing issue of police brutality.
I remember clearly in my career 2 cops that I would have never thought any way, shape, or form were aggressive, and I saw both of them punch somebody in the face. And it shocked me, because I never expected that from them.
Where the brutality comes from is part of the police culture. So when you're out on the street and you use brutality and you can get away with it, then you'll use it again.
Police are preoccupied with respect. If you disrespect a police officer in public and make him feel humiliated, he's going to get even.
In Righteous Kill, Rooster and Turk are exposed to drug users and dealers. These interactions create a true temptation for real cops.
In the United States, drug corruption is rampant amongst police departments. Whether it's taking money, whether it's taking drugs, whether it's a police officer using drugs, whether it's him planting drugs, whether it's falsifying documents to set up somebody, it's rampant.
There are all these ways in which your power provides you with the opportunity for personal gain. And it's hard to resist, and it's especially hard to resist when the subculture is saying, it's okay, as long as it's not dirty money, it's okay.
What do you want to do? You want to rob the dealer, you could rob him. You want to take his dope, take his dope. You want the money, take the money. Whatever it is, it's a free-for-all.
Sir,
The most startling stories of corrupt cops are those involving homicide. There are very few instances of this in real life, but here's the story of a real cop who killed.
There was a fellow called Luis Perez, and he would go to suspected dope dealers. Luis was a civilian, and he would have the accoutrements of a police officer. In those days, a clipboard, a walkie-talkie.
Excuse me, ma'am, I'm an officer with the narcotics division.
He would steal their drugs, rob them, and tell them that I'm not going to arrest you today. I'll give you time to get your affairs in order. I'll come back in a few days with an arrest warrant. This all occurred in the mid-1980s, and it was mostly cocaine that he was stealing. His wife, Barbara, was his lookout, but he really wanted to have some real cops with him. He thought it might make it easier. Unbeknownst to Lewis, his wife, Barbara, gets stopped by Hialeah police officer Richard Caride for a traffic violation. Now, Richard was a very good-looking young ladies' man. Instead of writing up Barbara with a traffic citation, he asked her out on a date, and they sort of hit it off. And she recruits Richard Caride to join the operation.
Busting them, but we take the drugs.
Richard had a flair for fancy cars. And his downfall was buying some very expensive foreign sports car, in those days $80,000, $90,000. And he's driving it to work where all the cops are making $25,000 a year. And no one could understand how he had this car, but he was foolish, and he was just causing a lot of attention to be attracted to him.
To have power and to feel that one can use that power to get what one wants without having to worry about being punished is a tremendous incentive for personal gain.
Needless to say, his buddy, Hialeah policeman Carlos Simone, asks him where he got the money for the car, and the next thing you know, Simone is part of the gang. Carlos loved his military .45 caliber gun. The other cops called it the cannon, and he always came to work with his cannon. Carlos Simone participates with them in some more operations. You never really know how many they've done because the dope dealers tend not to call 911 and report that their cocaine was stolen. On the last job, they went to the home of a man who owned a nightclub in Coconut Grove. His name was, I believe, Michael Corso. He lived there with his common-law wife, Beulah Del Panta. It was suspected he was a dope dealer. And Caride and Simone and Luis Perez go into his home and say, "We're from Internal Affairs." They said, "We're here for your drugs. We're narcotics detectives. We're here for your drugs." And he says, "I don't have any." Well, they tore his home apart. They looked all over. They literally tore the house apart. And he said, "I'm telling you the truth. I got ripped off a few days ago. Someone beat you to it. There's no drugs here."
You're fucking lying to me. I know you are. Do you believe me now? No, I don't believe nothing. Here's your shit. Nothing.
When it became apparent that there were no drugs in the house, Simone said to the others, "We're going to be 29'd. We have to do something." Luis Perez had a .22 caliber with a silencer. According to the testimony, Simone took the .22 and he shot both Corso and Del Panta with the .22. Being a small caliber gun, it did not kill them. He takes the .22 and he tosses it back to Perez saying, "This gun is a piece of shit," and he whips out his .45 caliber military pistol. And he executed the two of them by putting bullets in their heads. He knew he'd be arrested. He had a wife, he had a couple of kids. The last thing a cop wants to do is go to prison, and I think he panicked, and that's why he killed these people.
But a few weeks later, Barbara left Luis, stealing all his money, and fled to a hotel.
She's in a hotel for a few days, and she really panics, and she calls the county police and tells them what happened. And one by one, the cops pick up Luis Perez, who gives a full confession, Richard Caride, who gives a full confession. I believe Simone was arrested in his house. The police did not have a search warrant for his house. 5.5 months later, Richard Caride told us that the gun was in his bedroom, and Simone said those stupid cops should have looked for my gun, then they would have found it.
Without the gun, Waxman was unable to get a conviction for the murders. But 4 years later, that would change.
4.5 years later, a young kid gets arrested doing an armed robbery, and he has a gun.
Stop! Hands on the car! Put your hands on the car! Keep them out!
A .45 caliber gun. The robbery detective was pretty sharp, and he ran the serial number in the computer, and it came back owned by and registered to Carlos Simone several years before the murders. And this time, with the gun, I was able to convince the federal jury that all of these other less than credible people had to be telling the truth because it was Simone's gun that was the murder weapon.
4 years after the murders, in federal court, Carlos Simone was sentenced to 30 years in prison.
He was a family man. He had a normal reputation as a cop, no big problems. I think he just saw, he was tempted by all the easy money Karide was making.
And they asked him, weren't you afraid while you were doing these bad things? And he said, afraid of who? We're the police. People are supposed to be afraid of us.
I was very proud and honored to work with the homicide team from the Sheriff's Department, the Miami-Dade Police Department, then the Metro-Dade Police Department. They very aggressively worked this double homicide. When they found out from Barbara that 2 cops were involved, they worked even harder. They're ashamed that 2 other police officers would go out and commit robberies and actually kill 2 people. The cops want to solve it. It's a challenge to solve the homicide, and if a couple of cops are bad, they want to put them in jail.
The life of big city police officers is perhaps one of the most challenging professions in our society. And as we see in Righteous Kill, there are so many upstanding officers who serve among those who have yielded to the temptations of money and power. But each time we hear a new story of police corruption, we are reminded that the problems exist.
A police officer has a sense of having a great deal of power because he can tell people what to do, he can make people do what he wants, he can have his way. When you become the law, you don't have to follow the law.
Some people will always be tempted, whether they're cops or civilians, they'll always be tempted when they see easy money.
And the problem is police departments aren't doing a good enough job in recruiting. So it's the people that you're hiring and the people that are on top of them.
One of the first things you have to have is an external oversight. You can't depend on the chiefs and the deputy chiefs and the captains because they are the ones that facilitate corruption. The good cops are afraid of the bad cops.
It's a noble job. It's one of goodwill, and it does a lot of very good and beneficial things for a community.